Just how concerned should you be about DK Metcalf and the rest of the Seattle Seahawks pass catchers? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can check her out on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Kate, today, as always on Monday, it's a little bit of a panic meter Monday. We're going to start with the Seattle Seahawks, who had 6 first downs against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. Geno Smith, 13 of 28 for 156 yards and 1 interception. I'm going to read you the pass catchers numbers. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 6 for 63 on 7 targets. We'll take that. DK Metcalf, 1 catch for 50 yards. Tyler Lockett, 3 catches for 32 yards. How concerned are you about DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett moving forward?
I'm not necessarily I'm going to be honest. So I think part of this, Seattle Seahawks against the Baltimore Ravens, I think it's a pretty tough defensive matchup. So maybe one that the Seattle Seahawks weren't quite as prepared for as maybe we would have thought heading into this game. Still sitting at 5-3. Like, this team is doing fine, but I'm going to be honest. I think the biggest panic meter for me in this Seattle Seahawks offense is just the number of weapons. Like, the insane thing is, for as unhappy as we've been for the usage of Jackson Smith-Njigba, we're like, we want more targets. He's averaging 5.4 targets per game. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, both averaging 7.1 targets per game. So you're seeing some usage. DK Metcalf, he's leading the team in red zone targets. It feels like we should be getting better results based on this usage, but I'm going to be honest, just the gap between these 3 receivers is almost insignificant enough that I think we're kind of seeing this, the number of weapons in the Seattle Seahawks offense feels like it's almost coming to bite them a little bit, because I think it's kind of hard to establish rhythm with some of your best players when you continue to spread the ball out far and wide. And I kind of wonder if that's a little bit of what we're seeing. Even the running back room continues to be a little bit of a split here between Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. It's like they've almost flooded the gates too much on offense. And now I think it's kind of hard for anybody to establish offensive rhythm when am I making sense at all?
Yes, I think the problem for me is Geno's just not playing that well. He's regressed significantly since last year. You look at this game. I mean, obviously he was terrible, but even a couple weeks ago they played the Bengals on the road, 0 touchdowns in that game, 2 interceptions. Constantly was turning the ball over in the red zone. He already has 7 interceptions this year and only 9 passing touchdowns. The yardage is just too inconsistent. Look at the last 5 games. And just the passing yards, 157, 254, 219, 326 in that Bengals game where he did not throw a touchdown, and then 110 in the Giants game that he got hurt. You're just not getting the yards. He only has 4 passing touchdowns over the last 4 games, 6 over the last 6 games. So if you're not getting yards from Smith, you're not getting passing touchdowns. It's really hard for this offense to, basically to have 3 receivers that are fantasy relevant. And you're right, with the work being so spread out between those 3 guys and always having a tight end that's being annoying, catching, the short yardage touchdowns. You can't feel great about starting any of these players moving forward.
Yeah, Geno Smith, looking from 2022 to 2023, only averaging about 25 passing yards fewer per game. that's kind of insignificant when you think of how these targets are dispersed. So maybe that's like a few yards a piece for these guys. But what has been a significant hit is that drop in touchdown production. Average of 5.2 touchdown rate last season, which definitely that helps, right? That helps your DK Metcalf. That helps your Tyler Lockett. That just significantly elevates that floor, right? When maybe those yardage days are down, hopefully you can count on a couple of those passing touchdowns to keep the rest of the offense afloat. Down to 3.6% touchdown rate, and like
Not
you
great.
mentioned, the interception rate it increased a little bit. Like all of these factors are kind of coming into play now. It affects the whole offense, but particularly so when you add in a Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is, a relatively significant part of this passing offense. And I don't know if the targets were more concentrated between Tyler Lockett and just DK Metcalf, and then some of these ancillary pieces, they might be able to
Yeah.
stay afloat a little
So
bit more.
it's
But that's not
frustrating.
where we're at.
Let's run through their end of the season schedule because it's I don't think it's going to get all that much better. Now the next 2 weeks are favorable matchups. It's home against the Commanders, at the Rams. I think those are games where the Seattle Seahawks could put up a bunch of points, and you could start DK Metcalf, you can start Tyler Lockett. Listen to this rest of the schedule for Seattle: home against the Niners, at the Cowboys, at the Niners, home against the Eagles, at the Titans, home against the Steelers. Like, it can be pretty brutal for a lot of these, for Metcalf, for Geno, for Tyler Lockett, for JSN moving forward. And then you're talking about looking forward to 2024 with a 34-year-old quarterback with how old is Tyler Lockett now? He's got to be in his, close to being in his 30s.
32.
32. Yeah, he'll be 32 before next year kicks off. It's not great. It certainly doesn't feel great right now for Seattle.
It doesn't. Now, I think the biggest question for me, Marcus, like, looking at this team, obviously they're still competing. They're 5-3, so it's not like they're going to necessarily look at this and think, okay, this isn't sustainable long term, because it has worked for them so far this season, even if it hasn't been maybe the ceiling of play that we want. Now, is there a chance that, again, we mentioned Tyler Lockett going to be 32 ahead of next season? Is there a chance that maybe we see this team move on? The
Yes.
dead cap is still kind of significant heading into 2024, almost a $20 million dead cap. But is there a chance that maybe we see him move on either via trade or what
Def-
have you?
Definitely. I also could see him just being in a reduced role, right? Maybe he becomes the clear-cut number 3 receiver. They cut down on his route run, trying to save him for big games and, playoffs and that kind of stuff. But I think if you're a DK Metcalf owner or a Jackson Smith and Jigba manager, you want something to happen here because there's just too many mouths to feed in this offense.
Yeah, and I don't think it does seem to get any better. Like you mentioned, the schedule not ideal. A couple of tough road games, especially going on the road to face the Cowboys, the 49ers, who I do think that these are units that are going to get it back on track. You have another home game against the Niners. Like, none of this is ideal for what you would hope from this offense. But yeah, I think too many mouths to feed to necessarily sustain this drop in production from Geno Smith.
Yeah, it's not great right now out in Seattle, but let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, well, hold on. Do we have to? Do we have to about the Dallas? This
Sorry,
Cowboys team,
Marcus.
it's so
You
frustrating.
got to do it.
We've got to. The offense was absolutely outstanding against the Eagles, putting up yards, but one player that just can't find any type of rhythm at all, Tony Pollard. We will talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It is so easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is add your job and then the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Football season is here. Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanisha Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Kate, let's talk about Tony Pollard. At one point this offseason, a top 6 dynasty running back. The Cowboys put the franchise tag on him. He was a Pro Bowler last year and has basically done nothing this year. What are your thoughts on Pollard?
It's tough, Marcus. I think there's still maybe like an element of lost explosion here for Tony Pollard. Let's remember he had his 2022 season end prematurely due to a broken bone in his leg, and ankle injury, had surgical repair. Like it wasn't a pretty injury. But we stuck with it. Obviously, it's a broken bone, like broken bones heal and all that good stuff. But I do wonder if coming back from this injury, it is a lower body injury. Maybe we have seen him lose a little bit of that element of explosion here, that's affecting him. But all in all, like I'm not overly disappointed with Tony Pollard here in week 9 specifically, even though this touchdown drought is just it's an absolute killer, right? Like heading into the month of October, Tony Pollard sat as the overall RB4 in Dynasty Startup ADP, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. Like that stat is mind-numbing when you consider what he's performed to date. But Marcus, you look at the nullified touchdown, right? Like there was a play in the second half of the game. Tony Pollard ran up the middle 2 yards and then called back, unfortunately, on a penalty. How much, like, if that one touchdown played out and we got to walk away with that touchdown toward our point total here, we're suddenly looking at, I don't know, what a RB12 performance
Sure.
instead of RB26. And
It
are
just
we
doesn't.
having this conversation if that touchdown wasn't nullified?
I think we are, because to me, it's not just the touchdowns, which are obviously
A
it's not
problem.
great. Only to score 2 touchdowns both in week 1. It's just like the rushing yards, right? He hasn't gone over 53 rushing yards since week 3. He's gone over 75 rushing yards just once this season. And I thought he'd be more involved in the passing attack. Like the last 2 weeks, Kate, 6 targets for a combined 14 yards. Like you're just not getting really anything there at all. And I wonder with the way he's looked, if the Cowboys are looking at it like, okay, now it's clear he's not our running back of the future. We don't need to sign him to a long-term deal after this season. And things just get really hairy when running backs go into free agency. We saw it this year with like Miles Sanders, who coming off a great year goes to Carolina and all of a sudden doesn't play, right? I really worry about what Tony Pollard's value would look like on other teams not named the Cowboys.
I mean, I think that's fair. And you're looking at Tony Pollard, 5th most routes run in this offense, which, you would think that would mean good things. 198 receiving yards. That ranks 4th on the team. But again, there's just like this element of a decreased upside that you're looking at with Tony Pollard, and with the questions and the uncertainty of what's to come for Tony Pollard, being in a contract year. They're not going to franchise tag him again. Like he hasn't really done a whole lot this year to kind of state his case for why he should get that monster contract. 26 years old. Like I do think there are, plenty of reasons to be concerned. Maybe not necessarily for the point production, because like I said, I think that there's been some various circumstances that might be contributing to Pollard's lack of upside this season. But I think the big concern is what has that lack of upside done for his long-term prospects here in the NFL. And 26-year-old running back Marcus at RB4, it's not looking great based on what
No.
we've seen so far.
Just because I need to be cheered up a little bit because this morning has been pretty bleak as a Cowboy fan. CeeDee Lamb had
Y'all are
another
so dramatic. Oh my God.
it's a tough time to be a Cowboy fan right now.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb had a huge game, 11 for 191. He's put together 3 fantastic games right in a row. How many receivers right now in your dynasty leagues are you taking over CeeDee Lamb? Obviously, it's Justin Jefferson. I would take Jamar Chase over CeeDee. After that, it gets a little tricky. Are you taking AJ Brown over CeeDee Lamb?
I would say AJ Brown and maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think that's probably it, right? Like, and AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Browns are not necessarily givens there. So I might be like in the minority of people that would take the Browns over CeeDee Lamb there. But yeah, I have been a notorious CeeDee Lamb critic. Heading into this season, I said it's going to be critical that he establishes himself as more of an alpha type wide receiver. Like I think heading into this season, last season, there were question marks for me as to whether or not he could be a guy that really takes over games. And he's proved that he can be, which that was my biggest hiccup in terms of valuing him so highly as a dynasty wide receiver. Um, he's definitely pulled his weight. He showed you what he can do. 24 years old, like this, I think there's plenty of still untapped upside even for CeeDee Lamb at this point. And yeah,
So
sky's the limit.
on Dynasty League football, he's currently being drafted as wide receiver 3 behind Jefferson and Chase. Jalen Waddle is pretty close, but to me,
I'd
I
take
don't think
Lamb
they're
over Waddle easily.
yeah. Now there is a little bit of a gap between CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown and AJ Brown. Maybe people are a little bit concerned about AJ Brown's injury history. He's a couple years older than CeeDee Lamb, but I think if you bought CeeDee Lamb this offseason, you're very happy with that. He's on pace to have a 1,700-yard season. He probably won't get there just because I don't know if the Cowboys will continue to feed him at this rate, but
They
CeeDee
should.
Lamb, I mean, their offense is better for it.
I 100% agree. So, Marcus, at least you can sleep tonight knowing that it's CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, at least I don't even want to think about what this offense would look like without CeeDee Lamb. So we're not even going to put it out in the atmosphere. It's CeeDee Lamb, very, very good. Kate, let's talk about another receiver who I'm a little concerned about moving forward out in LA. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get a $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. I love futures bets. I actually just made one this morning on FanDuel. I went and picked the Chiefs, the 49ers, and the Jaguars to win their divisions. And I think that bet paid out like minus 175 or something. It's a lock. You can go ahead and lock that in. So many fun bets out on FanDuel. It's so much fun. The same game parlays are absolutely unbelievable. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, Kay, let's talk about the Rams. So no Matt Stafford in this game. They played Brett Rippon, who was exactly what you expected. 13 of 28 for 130 yards and no touchdowns, 1 interception. Cooper Kupp, 2 for 48 on 7 targets. This one game isn't going to cause me to be concerned. However, the last 3 games, 29 yards, 21 yards, 48 yards. Is this just as simple as if Matt Stafford's healthy, he's going to be fine? Or are you a little bit more concerned about him?
I think there's a little bit of a combination of both, right? So first and foremost, of course, there's the thumb injury for Matthew Stafford, which that was the whole reason we saw Brett Rippon in the first place, right? And even when Matthew Stafford does return, like if he were to come back into the game this week, right? He's still got a thumb injury in his throwing hand. So like I don't think we can even expect that Matthew Stafford is maybe necessarily like an immediate cure for this offense, even despite, how quickly they get him back. Cooper Kupp averaging a career low 2.4 average yards of separation, second lowest yards after the catch percentage for his total yardage. Is there any part of you that wonders if he's maybe not 100%?
Oh, there's no doubt. When you have a major hamstring injury like that, yeah, I know he missed the first 4 games of the season. It's one of those that it's going to take like 6 months for him to be fully recovered. Now, the issue is he's going to be 31 years old next year. I don't know what the future of Matt Stafford looks like in LA. It's clear that he is just a much better player with Stafford. They have this emerging star in Puka Nacua. Maybe I don't want to say the Rams trade him because I still think that's kind of unlikely, but I do wonder, like, is that volume going to be there that we're used to seeing him get? Frankly, I don't know.
That is, I think, the $1 million question here. Now, Cooper Kupp, like, as he's been aging, has sort of started to see that decline in the dynasty rankings valuation. Right now, in the month of October, wide receiver 21 on average in dynasty startup drafts. Now, we do know that wide receivers, the age factor is not necessarily the kiss of death, if you will, as it is for the running back position, let's say. But the emergence of Puka Nacua is something that I think we have to take into account here, right? Like it does, he's not going away. And I think, his presence, his force, like that has remained even despite Cooper Kupp's presence. And like, let's be honest, over the last 3 weeks, Puka Nacua has been the more efficient receiver when targeted, regardless of who is the quarterback targeting him.
So is Cooper Kupp going to be a buy low for you this summer, or are you going to be kind of just wait and see here?
I'm probably going to be wait and see. And, this is me. I'm generally more of a cautious fantasy manager. I'm not as aggressive as maybe you are, Marcus, but I think that this is sort of that, like, I don't want to say it's a perfect storm of problems for Cooper Kupp, but the questions at quarterback, the lingering health concerns like this, this hamstring issue, it seems like it's kind of still present, still a problem. And we know that injuries aren't necessarily something that improve, when you progress in terms of age. I don't know what we can necessarily expect from Cooper Kupp. I don't want to like prematurely react, but
I got some trades for courtesy of Dynasty League Football that I want your thoughts on before we head out. Cooper Kupp for Alvin Kamara and Jahan Dotson.
I'd probably take, if I'm in a win now position, I'll probably go with Alvin Kamara and
I'll take Cooper Kupp in that one, just because Jahan Dotson had a nice touchdown yesterday, but Kamara could be a non-factor by next year, and I still don't trust Jahan Dotson. Cooper Kupp for a 2024 first-round pick.
I'll take Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I would as well. Cooper Kupp for DK Metcalf.
Oh, Marcus. I'll probably take DK Metcalf. Even if I don't necessarily trust DK Metcalf to produce for fantasy, I also think I'm probably going to be able to turn around and have a more a higher trade potential for him on the back end as well, which is probably what gets him the edge there.
A couple more. Cooper Kupp for Zay Flowers.
Marcus, these are hard. I'll probably take Zay Flowers just by a hair.
Last one. Cooper Kupp for Terry McLaurin and a second-round pick.
I'll take Terry McLaurin in a second.
It's interesting. This is a weird time for Cooper Kupp because you could still see you could see a stretch this year where he gets a little healthier. Matt Stafford comes back from the thumb injury, and he just gives you a bunch of these 8 for 110 and a touchdown games that help you win a fantasy championship. Or you could see the Rams going the other way, being like, you know what? Let's shut Stafford down. We have our first round pick this year. Let's make sure that Cooper Kupp is healthy for the offseason, and let's rest in the final month of the year. And all of a sudden, you've got this aging dynasty asset that's not even playing for you anymore. So
that's the thing, Marcus. The range of outcomes is so incredibly wide, and I don't see a ton of middle ground. Like, it's really hard to envision it really feels like we're gonna get all of the Cooper Kupp or none of the Cooper Kupp, and that is a really tricky spot to be in, especially if you are a contending team.
It's fascinating. It's
a lot sad. Of interesting. I'm bummed out.
It is that because I want Cooper Kupp to be 100% and to be usual Cooper Kupp, and we just haven't seen that for basically a month now, and it's too bad. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen of the day. Every day is Matt and Ryan will be back on Tuesday and Wednesday. Kate, you and I back on Thursday and Friday to break down all the action from Week 9 to get you ready for Week 10. Go follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Dynasty. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Maju. Go check out her work at Pro Football Focus. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you next time.